Morning, good morning, good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you today?
Again, I'm sorry for the late wake up on Wednesday morning. We're recording this afternoon.
Happens to the best of us. I had a feeling that's what it was, and so I just jumped into normal routine.
So, what's your normal routine? You said you got the workout in?
Yeah, we have a little rowing machine, free weights in the basement. And if I can get out of bed, which normally I could do, then I usually get down there for a half hour.
The row machine is tough.
Rowing machine is so much better than any other piece of equipment because you actually feel like you're doing something, and it can be 5 minutes.
It's a workout. It's
Yeah,
brutality.
but better than a bike, better than a treadmill. Besides like swimming, I think it's my favorite, cardio type exercise.
Cardio and strength.
Yeah, but it's just 5 minutes. Honestly, you're feeling it. If you do it to 10 minutes, it's like a full workout, complete workout in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I used to do when I was really in shape 20K, no, 5K in 20 minutes.
5K in 20 meters. I have
Trying
no idea. I have no idea what I do because it's in like meters, but I know I do it for
Yeah, 5,000 meters.
10. Yeah, I used to track the meters, but the system's kind of weird. But I do 10 minutes normally, or if I'm pushing it, like 20.
Yeah, I want to get a home gym when we
So
find a
this,
place.
highly recommend this thing. It was like not that expensive. It uses magnets, so it's not the normal water systems or fan systems.
Yeah, the fan one, I know.
And it could roll up into a small closet the way it can
Really?
stand and be stored. Yes.
And you were never a real weight room guy in college. You were always like push ups, sit ups,
I
body weight
stopped
guy.
I stopped doing weights in my early 20s because I kept getting hurt.
Yeah.
like
But I
like
remember
just
you being a push up machine.
push-ups, pull-ups. I started doing that after like my early 20s because I just heavy weights just didn't sit well with my bones and my joints, and I was just sick of it after a while, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm trying to get into the heavy weights just because it's more time effective than running, getting a lift in. Because running, if you're doing long distance, you're out there for a while.
That's why you can't do running anymore
Yeah,
if you're going to do it for like an actual workout. If you want to do it to clear your head and get some exercise, it's great. But if you're
for
doing
sure.
it for a workout, you kind of either have to do sprints with that or like I do with the rowing machine now.
Speaking of working out, we have Band of Brothers this week, and they get into some phenomenal shape in the 101st Airborne Division training in Toccoa, Georgia. Little background on the book, written by Stephen Ambrose, published in 1992. Band of Brothers follows the men of Easy Company of the 101st Airborne Division from their training in Toccoa, Georgia, arrival in Aldbourne, England, drop into Normandy, France, liberation of Holland, Battle of the Bulge in Bastogne, Belgium, and finally to Hitler's Eagle's Nest in Berchtesgaden on the Germany-Austrian border.
First off, title is amazing. You can't have a better title than Band of Brothers, especially for a book like this.
I love this book. I'm going to rave about this book. I love this book. This is a book that I recommended. This probably is one of my favorite nonfiction books.
I enjoyed it very much. The title, though, you really are not going to beat Band of Brothers. I didn't realize it was 1992 actually until we started reading it and looking at it. I had
Yeah,
assumed it was a more recent undertaking and writing, and it kind of read that way too. But Band of Brothers, what a title!
and I think from Henry V, like if you
Oh, is that
remember,
right?
if you read Band of Brothers, yeah,
Yeah.
it's taken from Shakespeare.
Well, that makes sense then. Why it's such a good and lasting title. Um, this is one of your top recommendations, then your top reads.
Yeah, I think what Plum Island is for you fiction wise, this might be my standard bearer nonfiction wise in our rankings.
Interesting.
A little foreshadowing to our later rating.
I could see why. It definitely reads easy enough that you could get through. It is segmented into the training first, and then the D-Day, and then the different battles.
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I meant to do while I was reading it that I didn't do was understand what the heck all of like the titles and different regiments and divisions actually meant.
That's so hard to do. Like the
When you look
506, 101st. If you're not in the military, which neither of us are.
E Company, 506th Regiment, 101st Airborne. Like when they were talking about all those things, I have no idea if we're talking about 10,000 guys or if we're talking about 1,000 guys, just based on, regiment here or whatever here. That and all the titles was hard for me to keep track of.
Not like lieutenant, captain, all that stuff, colonel. Yeah.
Yes. Non-commissioned versus commissioned. I kind of had an inkling of what that was, but a lot of it went like over my head and through it.
Yeah, that's whenever I read military books, I'm like, it's a group of guys.
Group of guys. I think in this one, World War II, especially, maybe not especially, but certainly compared to what it is now, you kind of have to make the difference between people who are part of like the standing army who went to West Point versus your Sunday school teacher who just picked up and shipped off to war.
Which Dick Winters was.
A lot of these guys were. Yeah, a lot of these guys were like the local whatever people, and then they became these units and companies. Yeah, they weren't regular army. They became what they were outside of their average day-to-day lives. And they did
Malarkey was some University of Oregon student.
Yeah.
Garnier was just some guy.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing that's just insane to think about. We're reading that book and thinking of grown men. There were 20 and 23-year-olds, maybe 26-year-olds.
Yeah, they talk about this guy was 30. He's the old man of the brigade.
By far the old man. Most of them were 20 years old, which
they're so young.
Yeah.
Obviously, this was made into a hit HBO miniseries, which have you seen?
Bits and pieces. Never went start to finish.
I think it might be the best thing ever put on television.
I feel like a lot of people have said that. The ones that I've watched were very good. Big time commitment. That's a big time. Not just like time commitment too, but war movies like that are emotional, I think. And so you really have to be like, it's not like fantasy where you go to sleep at night thinking like, oh, that was a fun story. You go to sleep and thinking like, Jesus, I'm 33 and couldn't imagine doing what these 20-year-old kids were doing.
Yeah, this guy's being blown up. This guy's freezing.
Yeah, so that's quite a commitment, but I've heard incredible things about the show.
It's a must watch.
I was reading through the book. I did recognize the names and like put it to the characters in the show. I feel like the show did a pretty good job with that.
The show's phenomenal. Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg, they absolutely crush it.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, because there were pieces to it that reminded me of
Saving Private Ryan.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that makes sense that Tom Hanks was involved in both.
Yeah, I think Saving Private Ryan came out first, and then they used some of the. Actually, they make a reference to a guy who lost 3 brothers.
Yeah.
In this book,
that's what I was getting at.
And I think that's how they got the idea for Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, that makes sense. That and the whole holding of like the final small village made it seem very similar to Saving Private Ryan also.
So one of the things I like most about this book is that you kind of get a picture of the whole war just through a tight company's viewpoint. Yeah. And what's so interesting is how the company shifted over time as guys were casualties, as guys died, as new members came in. That's gotta be tough going through battles with a lot of guys you went through training with for multiple years, and then there's just these new kids coming in. They touch on that in the show, but that's gotta be. They talk. Ambrose references that quite a bit. How the new replacements were not treated as the same guys from the early stages of Georgia and England.
Yeah, for a couple of reasons it makes sense. One, you obviously if you come up with people, you have a closer connection. But two, the replacements were coming in not because people were, celebrated and retired. It was because they died or got injured.
Yeah.
So they were coming in and replacing your friends. So every day you're dealing with a reminder that my buddy who I've been with from the get-go isn't here because of a bad reason. And now I got to have the same type of relationship with this person that I don't know.
I don't feel like you've earned your spot.
That's crazy to me. What I also think is kind of nuts compared to like old time war is that they always say like war forms like brotherhoods and bonds and things like that. Mm-hmm. But like going back to like, ancient wars, Greek and stuff like that, those wars were the battles were like a day, maybe.
Yeah.
Most of the battles, these people were months, like months together in foxholes, months together in small knit groups, just months and months and months. The relationships that those formed are different than I think anything else you can think of in society.
What's actually is kind of crazy is the pace of this book once D-Day happened. It all kind of takes place in 1 year.
Yeah, you didn't expect that, right?
Yeah, because they spent almost a year in England getting
Training,
ready.
training. Yeah.
Training, and
I
a
do
year in
remember.
Georgia.
So for World War II books and history, I can't think of. So I've definitely read like a Winston Churchill biography, autobiography, whatever. I've definitely read some FDR stuff. I read a book about Patton, but like you said before, I read it kind of at the higher level of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I had forgotten all about like how late we were coming in and how delayed potentially D-Day actually was. And by that time, Hitler was kind of potentially already on his heels a little bit, or at least not making the same gain. So yeah, we kind of came late to that war, or later than I thought to that war. Yeah.
Yeah. Pearl Harbor happened December 7th, 1941. We didn't invade Europe until June 6th, 1944. So it's
June 6th, 44. And then this book, The Story of Easy Company, kind of finished off.
They celebrate July 4th, 45 in the Eagle's Nest.
Yeah. So I was thinking even like before that, like the big Bastogne, I think was around Christmas because there was like
it was the winter time.
Yeah.
Christmas of 44.
Yeah. So I mean, really, you're not talking about that long at all.
You gotta look up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it was pretty interesting too, like you said before, taking the perspective of this one company because it was like an elite company, like paratroopers being your elite. I guess that is kind of like what you would expect Navy SEALs to be right now, like first ones in behind enemy lines, go in and with objectives to do, and you got this is your A team. Paratroopers of a company filled of not military experts, not civilians, not point graduates, but civilians. That's kind of crazy. And that's one of the things they mentioned why they think we had an advantage over the German soldiers because we had those type of people.
Well, the person who developed these civilians into more or less special operations, Captain Sobel, he's played by David Schwimmer in
I remember. Yeah.
David Schwimmer does a fantastic job.
Yeah.
He's very hateable,
nasally, and then kind of a weakling, right?
A weakling prick.
Yeah.
Like a very interesting character. He does a really good job in the series. And he's almost one of the most interesting characters both in the miniseries and in the book.
Yeah, they
hated him.
Yeah, but so usually in a book like this, I mean, they really didn't give him. They gave him some credit, but you could tell it was written by those guys. One, number two, I forgot when they said he died, but he didn't die well and like happily.
Yeah. Did you read how, like, what the aftermath of the war for him?
Remind me, it was bad.
Like, I think his wife left him, and he was estranged from his kids, and then he committed suicide.
Oh, okay, suicide. I was just gonna say, I think was he like penniless and like homeless or something like that.
Yeah. And no one went to his funeral.
Yeah. So that's the darkness that the book starts off with, like ripping into this guy, is pretty hardcore. But you can get away with saying things like that and writing it because it came from the firsthand perspective of these people who were under him, training him, and I mean, you can't say anything about their opinions and their judgments because they are just the greatest generation. I mean, they did things that you can't even fathom.
So that's one thing I love about this book is that Ambrose, it's almost like an oral history because he gives insight into how the interviews are going with the men of Easy Company.
Yeah.
So it'd be like Dick Winters shrugged his shoulders when he said, this was the job I had to do. Or someone was like, I hated that man, but he made us one unit. And they gave the perspective of what it was like being told these firsthand accounts as they're telling the larger story. As he's telling the larger story, I thought it was fascinating because it's almost like the actual men are telling you the story.
Yeah. which I thought it was. It's the only way you can get that kind of detail on that information. I mean, sure, it seems like a lot of times the military makes you write up or immediately like interview after these types of events where they give out medals and things like that. But there's no like war historian out there with a pen and pencil who has these
no.
It's from the guys.
I thought that was so
From the
interesting.
guys
Where
also,
he'd be like,
this was
go ahead.
1992, so we're talking about almost 50 years.
I know.
And these guys remember those details. And not just one guy having a story and then another guy kind of like remembering exact details of the same story, the same people. That was pretty cool because 50 years is a very long time. And these events must have scarred these guys equally.
The process of making this book must have been wild. And I'm glad that Stephen Ambrose gives us some insight into that. Because he says one of the guys he lived on his block and went to lunch with him.
Yeah.
Every month for 2 years as he was writing this book.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible formulation of this book. A couple other things.
Think about also like what. So was this the elite company or the most elite company, or was it an elite company that he just happened to meet these people on? Like how many Dick Winters did the U.S. have running around in World War II? Probably more than one.
Probably. I just think this company went through so many pivotal events from D-Day to Bastogne to the Eagle's Nest.
Yeah.
So you can kind of tell the Western Front story through these guys. Have you seen pictures of the map of Germany's counteroffensive, the Battle of the Bulge, and the picture of Bastogne?
This.
Yes, it's absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
That month they were there, or those couple of weeks they were there, seemed horrific.
Yeah, that is Storybrooke. Doesn't seem real.
Hunkering down in the cold.
Yeah.
Pulling guys off the front line because they're frostbite, and you're just sleeping next to guys for warmth.
I know. We had a little snow here the other day, and I went outside for a walk, just out in the parking lot.
Chilly.
I was cold and turned it in pretty quick.
Yeah, like they have no winter coats, no winter boots, no.
That part actually that was kind of like hurtful and depressing, where they said that we found out later on why we were getting like the bad cigarettes and why we weren't getting socks and stuff like that, is because throughout the supply chain it was being pilfered by our own people. There were just people who were skimming off the
looking
top
out for themselves,
and that's killer. Yeah, that hurts to read and to think about.
Yeah, it's war. You gotta look out for yourself. It's tough.
Yeah.
Also, and then eventually the supply line got cut because they were surrounded.
Yeah.
So tough scenario those guys were in. Countering that, how awesome would it have been going up to the Austrian-German border to the Eagle's Nest, knowing that you've captured the Nazi stronghold?
That being able to take whatever you want in like a foreign country and do whatever you want is kind of cool. It's like you're in school, but the teachers aren't there and there's no repercussions for anything you're doing. It's just complete. I couldn't imagine the complete like reckless lawlessness for guys who were in the early 20s who probably thought that they were as likely to die as get to this point. So they're playing with house money. I mean, this is just complete house money. No repercussions. Nobody's going to tell you can't. You're the big man on campus. It seemed like a wild time.
They drank a lot.
That's another killer part too, though, because you go through all this and there were people who died in like drunk driving accidents.
I was going to say, when they were going around Berchtesgaden and boozing it up, I was like, these guys are going to get in accidents. And like 2 pages later, they were like, 6 guys died in DUIs after they conquered Germany.
How horrible is that to think about, too?
Oh, terrible. Well, also, he mentioned a lot of these guys were 19, 20, 21 from small towns. They didn't have a lot of experience drinking.
No.
So it's like you're a freshman in college and you have like 5 beers and you're wasted. And these guys are drinking, Nazi wine cellars full of booze.
Yeah. And again, like probably down 40 pounds, 50 pounds from their
Yeah,
going
not
weight.
eating.
You add all that stuff into it. Wild times, I'm sure.
And also, there's not much else to do. You know, you're celebrating or you're drinking away the sorrows. There was a lot of booze drinking
A
there.
lot to be had and a lot that was had. Yeah.
But I like how Ambrose mentioned that a lot of they're trying to steal a lot of memorabilia or souvenirs because it gave you hope that you could show people in the future. So it was a way to frame your mind around surviving past the war, which is super interesting because you think it's almost just pillaging, but in a way you can rationalize it.
Yeah, he said that, and I was trying to get my head around it also because I couldn't put myself in that perspective. Like, to pick up a dead German's gun and bring that home with you was something that these guys were like trying to do, and
Luger.
You know, and going for. Yeah, that I didn't get that. Meaning that I couldn't understand if I was there why I would want to do that.
How that would override self-preservation.
Yeah, like I would think of the only thing I was trying to think of it was like, yeah, there's been a couple of times I've gone to like a baseball field and I picked up some dirt and put it in my pocket.
Yeah,
right? We've kind of done that before, right? Or like a golf course, if you pick up like a broken tee or
yeah,
turf or something like that. But that's why I didn't really get the gun or the Nazi flags or like the armbands would have. Yeah, I didn't really get that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, I played a couple nice courses, just fortunately, and it put a range ball just in my bag, just with the name of the course.
Maybe it's more like you see, basketball guys like trade jerseys. Maybe it's something like that.
But they're not getting killed if they jersey swap.
But to fight for it with people also, to like fight and steal for these kind of guns, I didn't really get that.
I think it's just a way to show people back home what you did and what you accomplished.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I think it's kind of like, again, that mindset is something I can't put myself into, but I imagine it's kind of like video game where, there's not rules. You just go around killing people and there's no real consequences. You're taking what you can get. And it's kind of sickly fun, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a totally different mindset.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a little bit of a brief episode today, but I love this book. I think it's really cool how it goes through the stages of the war, the mindset of the guys. It gets so many different perspectives. Dick Winters is just the ultimate man's man. Everyone looks up to him. Someone challenged him. He's an all-state wrestler from the Heartland. Absolutely whoops him.
Yeah.
The guy's like,
doesn't drink.
Doesn't drink.
He's just Captain America.
Yeah, he's played by the guy who plays Bobby Axelrod in what's that? Damian something?
Billions.
Damian Lewis, is it?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah,
he's a British guy.
Good. He's a British guy. Yeah. Again, the miniseries is fantastic. I love this book. I feel like it's a theme for me where I love the first, second, and fourth quarter of books. And
what do you consider the third quarter of this one? The one that you
in between Bastogne and the Eagle's Nest, where they're just they've won the Battle of the Bulge and they're just hanging out in Belgium a little bit.
Yeah, so for me, I think I liked the first quarter. I liked all four quarters. It's just that I did get tied down with some of the
terminology
and names and promotions and demotions and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I think that's a big thing because it's who the guys are choosing to lead them and what leaders get thrust upon them and what leaders get weeded in and what leaders get.
It's a big thing, and it must not be as confusing once you're in it. But for me, it was just very confusing. Trying to keep track of names was one thing, but names and rank was very difficult.
Yeah. All right. You want me to give a rating, or you want to lead it off?
Yeah. Why don't you go with why don't you go with yours first?
Okay. Let me just pull it up right here. All right. I have given my highest grade right now is a 9.6 to Plum Island. Yeah. I think, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to give this a 9.6 as well. Plum Island 9.6 fiction, Band of Brothers 9.6 nonfiction. These are our leaders in the clubhouse for what we're measured all future books on.
Yeah, if that's the case, I'm going with a 7-2 for this one.
Okay. Have you seen my? I filled out the Google sheet, and so
Yeah.
that gives.
Yeah, I was just looking at. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, it was very good. Definitely would recommend it. Liked it. Is it one that I'd pick up and read again? Probably not. Maybe in the future, but probably unlikely to do so. Like once,
Not read, but would definitely watch a miniseries. I feel like you gotta watch it.
Yeah, like I said, I have watched a few episodes. If that's on, I would watch it. But yeah, I would definitely do that. Recommend it for sure.
Awesome. All right. Next week we got The Firm by John Grisham. I think I mixed up John Grisham and James Patterson 15 times in this.
Yeah, I've like caught it after the fact because I get a mix up too, and
as have I.
After the fact, what can you do? Yeah,
what are you gonna do?
This is Grisham, definitely different. And I like how we're switching this. We're going from Band of Brothers to The Firm. It's a good change of pace. It's a good switch.
Yeah, I started it. It's an interesting book. I think it's going to be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, it's smart. It's a smart read.
Yeah. Okay, so we got The Firm, and we got Playing for Keeps by David Halberstam, a nonfiction book about Jordan and how he revolutionized the NBA in American sports. And then Going Infinite by Michael Lewis about Sam Bankman-Fried and that whole crew.
Yeah, and that's I think by far our most current book. Because I think
that came out this past summer or this past spring.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Cool. You want? We'll talk at The Firm what we're going to put on after Going Infinite.
Yeah, we'll add another one after The Firm. We'll think about it from now until then.
Awesome. Quick recap. How was your Thanksgiving? Everyone good?
Yeah, it was good. A couple days because we had Thursday on the Thanksgiving, and then we did a little something Saturday afterwards for people we weren't with on Thanksgiving. It was a good long weekend.
Phenomenal. How was the bar pre-Thanksgiving?
It's one of the best traditions.
I love those things. All right,
I got there first thing in the morning. There's just like the 6 regulars there, and I'm bringing the baby in, and everyone was just like, "Is that a baby?"
No shame in that game.
Sitting on the bar, hanging out with everybody, looking around. It was a lot of fun.
I love it. All right, man. Take it easy. We'll talk next week.
Good stuff. All right.
See ya.